You are listening to the Baobab Project. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us under the Baobab tree from wherever you are in the world today. We are joining you from Halifax, Nova Scotia. We've got so much to explore, from culture to lifestyle to health, relationships, education, and so much more. Now over to our podcast host for today.
And thank you for joining us on the Baobab tree. We are doing our podcast today is Black Students in Research at Mount Saint Vincent University. I have here with me on the panel Lucan, Naomi, Kamla, and Nicholas. We may have a few others joining us, but today we will explore the experiences of Black students in research at Mount Saint Vincent University, and I'm excited to hear what their experiences are. I'm hoping that this experience today will help to guide our potential researchers to want to focus on research. And in the future we will have quite a number of Black students engaged in research at Mount Saint Vincent University. I will call on the participants just tell us something briefly about themselves and possibly about their research if they'd like to, and then I'll move forward with the questions. And thank you to my audience as well, our audience. Thank you for being here. I hope you will have the opportunity to learn as well from what the participants shared today, and that we will all leave here more knowledgeable, much more knowledgeable than when we came. So I'll call on Lucan first to just talk a little bit about his research, what you're doing, your level, and anything you'd like to share with us today.
Hi, good day, everybody. My research, I'm doing my master's degree in child and youth, and my research is on the role of religion in fostering resilience among at-risk youth in the Halifax metropolitan region. That's basically what I'm focusing on. At the moment, I'm actively trying to get participants, which is, from my experience, a very difficult process. But hopefully, I will get through this.
Thanks, Lucan. And Naomi?
Hi. I just graduated from the Mount last year, May. I did my honors thesis, and the topic of my thesis was how do Nigerian and Ghanaian female students at MSVU perceive Christianity's influence on their lives as women. So yeah, that's a little bit about what my research is about. And
Thanks, Naomi. And just to remind our panelists that you do not necessarily have to share any details if you want to remain anonymous. But if you do share, it will help for a rich discussion as well. So the next person I'll ask is Kamla, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Okay, hi everybody. So my name is Kamla Williams, one of the Jamaicans on here. I am in the Child and Youth Study Department. Prefer not to share my research topic yet, just because I am just constructing my proposal to go towards the ethics direction. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Kamla. And Nicholas?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas, and I am in the Applied Human Nutrition Department. I have been involved in quite a number of studies across different departments, and currently I am conducting the Earn Play project, which is one that's set to understand perceptions of parents and early childhood educators on risky play among African Nova Scotian children. I am also a part of the racial stress study on cognition and the cannabis effects study on cognition. I am in the process of starting a schizotypy project, which just tracks unusual and disorganized patterns of thinking and seeing how it correlates with cannabis use. And lastly, I am also doing a few research projects on racism and dietetics.
Thank you, Nicholas. And Joke?
Hi everyone, my name is Ajoke Lasende. I am in the Curriculum Studies program and currently I'm writing my thesis. So I'm looking at the acculturation experiences of African international students at the Mount. I am focusing on the pragmatic competence and intercultural friendships with domestic students and how that impacts their adjustment to academia in Canada and the society in general. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you, Ajoke. And I just want to remind the audience that we're on the Baobab tree, and under this tree, you are welcome. I think what we need to remember is that from an Afrocentric perspective, that we sit in a circle, we watch each other in their faces, and we talk. No one is higher than the other, and everyone is free to participate and to share. And again, out of respect for those who are working with us and to see us through our projects, please remember to not to put a person's name forward, but the position. For instance, a thesis supervisor, you may just address the supervisor as a committee member. And I don't want you to identify any specific person or a specific office. Let's just be respectful of those who are helping us acquire the knowledge that we're hoping to acquire at the end of this degree. And again, thank you for panel members for your willingness to participate. And from time to time, the audience might be asked questions. They might be asked to do something here, and that is okay because it's all part of this Afrocentric model of sitting under the baobab tree and learning from each other. So I'll start off the questioning by asking Naomi, could you tell us, talk a bit about your experience as a student in research at Mount Saint Vincent University?
Well, when I decided to do my honors and do my research, it was a pretty long and kind of complicated steps that I had to go through. Well, the ethics itself was, I think, the hardest part for me, and then finding participants was like right after that. And I think the reason why it was hard for me specifically was because we were getting into the COVID period, like COVID just happened, and having to find time and fix a date, and it was very difficult. And with the ethics, we had to go back and forth a lot on having to make sure that my research wasn't going to be a problem for my participants. And in as much as I had explained that I felt like it wasn't a traumatic topic for the participants, the board of ethics still didn't find it conducive enough. So I had to do a lot more research to convince the ethics board that my topic and the research itself wouldn't be so harmful. I had to be more intense when it comes to my confidentiality protocols and all of that. I don't know if I answered the question correctly, Randy.
You always answer the question correctly when you start talking. It's your experience. Thank you so much, Naomi. And you mentioned a couple of things that I'll jump in and just ask two participants who made mention of this in their introduction. So Lucan, I'll just pick up on Naomi's, she talked about finding participants. Could you pick up on that while you talk about your experience as a student in research?
Yeah, all right, thank you. I think I basically had that problem as well. But before that, I believe that the process of getting ethics clearance and so on can take some time. But when you get to the stage where you have clearance, the next big obstacle for me is basically getting participants. And maybe it's because of the design of my research, my specific research, or because it's COVID. But one of my biggest obstacle in basically moving forward in my research is basically getting participants. As I mentioned before, my research is on the role of religion in fostering resilience among at-risk youth in Halifax metropolitan, regional municipality. Maybe the criteria that I basically set was basically too tight, if you will, in terms of, I wanted people from low income area who have gone to university or is now attending university or working. And, that sort of create a problem because I guess based on what I'm experienced, you're less likely to find people in a low income area who has gone to university and or who is working. I don't know if I would have difficulty finding participants because of my race, because I did all my, apart from speaking over the telephone, and people would probably pick up from my accent that I'm probably a black person. I would think that race would have very little to do with my experience here.
Thank you, Luke. And also from Naomi's experience, she had mentioned ethics, and Luke, and you refer to that as well. I'll ask Ajoke to jump in there and talk about her experience and also about your experience with ethics. Thanks.
So thanks, Randy. So about my experience with ethics, I think for me it was a little more straightforward because I don't know why, but somehow it was a little straightforward for me. I did have some, of course, like back and forth, having to edit my responses in some sections of the form. But one thing that I did at the beginning was to anticipate some of the questions that they may have, because my the picture I have about ethics is me trying to make my research sound as simple as possible, and also getting the point across that I am aware that I'm going to be working with human participants, and I wouldn't be I would respect them and ensure that there is no trauma from my end or from the research to them. So just having that right in front of me all the time, I think it really did help, because most of the feedback that I got was more relating to maybe grammar, or I don't know. It wasn't so basically it went much smoother than I anticipated I was going to be. So yeah, that was my experience with ethics and getting participants. My research, it's a qualitative study. So basically I have 6 participants. So I think it was kind of easier that way because I didn't have, I didn't need a large number of participants. And yeah, that was my experience with that.
Thanks so much, Ajoke. And we just got the chance to see that, from Ajoke's perspective, that she had a different experience with ethics, as Naomi and Lucan mentioned, which is really good. It's based on your topic, based on how you present the work. So ethics could be easy, quick, or it could be a long one. And I'm sure the other participants might be able to talk about that. Ajoke, you'd mentioned the traumatic experience of participants in that conversation there just now. Well, let's focus, and I'll ask Nicholas to talk about this. What about the flip side? How about the experiences of the researcher? You as a researcher, a Black student at the Mount, did you ever had any of those kinds of traumatic isolating experiences that you'd like to share while doing your research at the Mount? Nicholas, you can answer this question.
Well, let me preface by saying that I think that generally speaking, the Mount tends to be very open and accepting. But having said that, much of the spaces that I have been in as a Black male has largely constituted me being the only racialized researcher in that department or study. And not that that brings anything that's particularly troubling from a harmful standpoint, but I tend to experience cases where there are inherent biases or assumptions that have to be made during certain processes with meetings or tasks or responsibilities, or assuming that I have a specific set of knowledge or understanding of certain other like Black demographics and their experiences, which typically is not true. Even if I'm doing the research on a certain population, I might not necessarily be able to reflect their experiences. And being in a predominantly white space, I think that tends to be the misconception about having another person there who is Black. So for me, I think there is like that tokenism aspect. Although I'm well qualified for the position, you're always feeling as though they also have you there to get your specific experience and how to like address that community.
Thank you, Nicholas. That was a lot of information there. We'll filter through some of those. Some of the questions that I have will be able to answer some of those concerns that you've just raised and issues that you've raised. And I really appreciate how you articulated that part of the discussion. Kamala is relatively new into her research, but I still would like to hear, what is your experience thus far, and are you experiencing any form of isolation, or are you traumatized by hearing what the others have talked about? So I'll leave the floor to you now, Kamala.
I'm not necessarily traumatized by what the others have been talking about, because these are rumors I've been hearing. Well, I shouldn't say rumors, but by doing classes with students who were in their final semester who shared their experiences, I was able to preempt some of the issues I might have had when I got to this point. So the issue of ethics, that might be a longer or more tedious process if I'm working with human participants versus doing research with archived data or something else, because finding participants has been a huge issue for persons in the past. I didn't want to encounter those issues. So what I decided to do was to find archived data. So I reached out to lecturers who were doing research already in areas that I was curious about. I did find areas like that, but I wasn't too interested in the topic, in the research that they were doing. I tried to see how I could use their data in something I was interested in, but it didn't work out. And so I decided that I would maybe take a more ethnographical approach to my research, just to avoid some of those issues in my process, because I didn't want it to be too long of a process.
Thank you, Kamala. And explaining that process seems even longer than anyone would want to do. Research should be, I'm interested in research. Here's my topic. What do I need to do? You get the kind of support and you move along. What you just explained might scare a lot of people away from research. So you also mentioned at the beginning that you heard about some of these experiences from students who have gone through the process already. And having heard these experiences, about these experiences. I'm interested to know why. Why are Black students still interested in research? Naomi, can you tell me why you were interested in undertaking research in your degree? Although it's an option, and I know an option is not an option for everyone, but for those students who have that option, I'll be asking you as to why you undertook research.
Well, for me personally, I feel like I had very different reasons why I did my honors. One reason was I had taken a research class and I enjoyed the process of the class. And the second reason was I wanted to challenge myself to do it and see how I would fare in the research world. Another reason was the topic that I had chosen. I felt like it was a topic that is spoken about, yes, but I felt like the more light was needed to be on the topic itself, and I wanted to be one of the people that was going to do research on that particular topic. So I think these were the reasons that was running through my head when I decided to opt to do my honors.
Thanks, Naomi. And Nicholas, I'll ask you the same question. Why was it essential for you to undertake research in your degree?
I think foundationally, I've always been interested from like a curiosity or just intellectual curiosity to answer some key questions that I've had. That usually surface after reading a few articles or just experiencing like a specific subgroup that's affected. Actually, one of my most recent studies has been on seniors, and it's tied to the pandemic, such that there has been like an increased level of social isolation among immigrant seniors, and they're typically like they're seen on the back end as not really a priority, but they do make up a substantial amount of the population. So, having said that, I think I try to identify key populations who are affected and try to get work or studies that are centered around that, because it's also a part of something that's important to me, which is equity. So that's really why I got into research by providing a foundation that can create interventions to better help those causes.
Thanks, Nicholas. And Joke, can you tell us why you've chosen research?
Yeah, sure. So I think aside the fact that naturally I've always been interested in doing research, I my research now is focused on the acculturation experiences of students, of African international students, and this is something that really jumped out to me when, because I stayed in the US for a bit before moving to Canada, and that was my first international travel, and I could notice a range of experiences that I was having, in terms of negotiating my identity, finding myself really. And so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to look into this, the acculturation experiences. I think the other thing for me is from a professional standpoint. So I'm interested in academia, and I see research as a process that helps you to become, in the real sense, especially with the master's research, because this is where you've learned a lot. Like, you could do the course-based program, in my opinion. I probably would have been done a long time ago if that was what I wanted to do, which could work for some other people. But I see that some of the things that you learn during the program, you have the opportunity to implement through your research and, try out a number of things. You learn how to do the literature review, for instance, in the course-based programs, and you probably never have to do that again if you don't go into academia. But then you're writing this long paper that forces you to look into how to do these things. So for me, it's more of, becoming, especially if you're going into the academic world. PhD and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ajoke. Would any other participant want to share with us why they've chosen research?
All right. For me, it was well, I was in a situation where I mean, for my program, we have to do a research paper, but apart from that, I felt that my topic that I mentioned earlier was something that I wanted to know more about, something I was interested in. You know, I have always tried to understand how religion basically, you know, helps in the healing process. And for me, I when I was tasked with completing a thesis, I felt that it was a good idea to try to investigate the role of religion in helping youth to rise above their challenges. In addition to that, I did a thesis at the graduate level because I'm hoping to do a PhD in the near future, and I think that a good thesis would basically help to you know, push me forward in terms of that goal.
Go ahead, Kamla.
Okay, so for me, I worked as a medical social worker in Jamaica, specifically in the HIV and other STIs field. And I saw how important data and research was towards continuing the program and making the program better, and also having how the data influence the lives of individuals on a personal individual level, you know. So I wanted to be a part of that process. I wanted to understand how I could contribute to data that will make other person's lives better. And so when I found this degree program, it had a research aspect. I realized that I would not only be able to learn how to do it, but I would actually be forced to do research so that I'd have that practical example on how to do it. So in the future, I could conduct research and influence that space as well. Because I feel like I can contribute to the knowledge in that arena, right? As also legacy, you know? I want to create a legacy for myself and for the future where they can look back and say, hey, this is research that Kamla did, and you know, it contributed significantly to this space. Yeah.
Lovely. That is really lovely. And yes, being cited is one of the things many researchers want to be, you know, they want people to cite their work. So when I finished my research, all that was on my mind is this work will, I'm talking about my thesis here. I thought this work will be sitting on a shelf, taking dust, like the rest of those theses sitting in the library. It's either that or I take action to make it a living document and to bring action to the work that we've done. So, you know, I think you're all coming to the table with the passion to see your work come alive, not only on paper, but to apply it to our context. And I really appreciate the way you've each presented your work. You've come to the Mount, you found your degree. How difficult was it to find information about doing research at Mount Saint Vincent University? And Kamala, I'll ask you to talk about that since you seem to be the newest person applying for the research program.
Listen, Randy, it was a challenge and a half because, well, first coming in, I had to talk about my research in my application process. I had little or to no information about research, what I would want to research or anything like that. But I just wrote down the thing I was most passionate about, and that was it. When I started the program, in all of my classes, research was spoken about. We did little tidbits of things that our instructors said that would contribute to research in the end. But in the back of my mind, I was assuming that when I got to my semester where I had to do my thesis, I would register be attending a class maybe once or twice a week, or once or twice every other week, just to ensure that we were on the right track, gaining knowledge and experience. But it wasn't so. Like, coming closer to my semester where I would start my thesis, I realized that this is something that students are doing semi-independently. I reached out to the secretary of the department and I'm like, what is the process? What do I need to do? And that's when she sent me a link to information that was online. So the information is there online. It is very easy to understand. And I don't know how I missed it, Randy, but it was there. It was always there. It was not new information, but I read through it and got the understanding of what I needed to do in order to, from beginning to end. But there was the challenge of, figuring out supervisors and committee members and all of that. And, you want to find the right fit, but you only know and have experience with the instructors that you've had classes with. So that was also a challenge for me to figure out. So that kind of placed a lag on the process. So when I got to my finally this semester, where I realized that I needed to be registered and still not having a thesis supervisor, it kind of set me back in that registration process.
Thank you for sharing there. You said a whole lot, and I know that the other panel members are just trying to figure out where do they add to that. I'll ask them, and they'll probably say ditto. But our experiences are so different. What you said is quite similar to what someone else has said, and I'm sure that those who have been here for a while in research work might have something else to add to this. Nicholas, can you jump in and share a little bit more?
I would say that the process for me was actually a bit different. I learned a lot of my knowledge from professors and other people that I've collaborated with on projects. And I think just the openness from them, from their aspect to include me in different projects, both like my repertoire of knowledge and just experience with research. So once I got a bit more comfortable with what that entails, I became a lot more proficient. And as I said, now being on numerous different studies, like I'm able to understand what that process is like. So it's become a bit more seamless. But overall, I just think that it's important to speak to those people who have had the experience and the knowledge and learn from them as well as you embark on like any research you want to do.
Absolutely. And Naomi, since you're the veteran here, can you share what your experience was like?
Let me see. From the Mount page, the library page on the Mount, I found out that it was kind of more challenging to find information on there, and I had to go out of there to look for what I needed out of the Mount page for research. I found most of the information, some of my information on there, yes, but I also feel that because of the topic that I chose, it made it kind of difficult to find information that I needed on there. So that led me to look elsewhere for most of the information that I used for my thesis.
Thank you. And I'll open this question to any other members who would like to share what their experience was like.
Yeah, so I was just going to speak to my experience with getting a supervisor, and I'll be speaking from the perspective of somebody from continental Africa. So as an African international student, I think one of the challenges is the difference in academic culture back home in Africa than here. Back home in so I'm Nigerian, so back home in Nigeria than here. And sometimes looking back at that process, I feel like just having that exposure just having that exposure to know that this is how you can approach several people and have meetings with them, for instance, to chat about your topic and see if this is something that they would be willing to take on, in the process of finding a supervisor. Because I approached it differently at that point because I wasn't aware of some of the options that I had. So I think, and Kamla shared something related to this on how that the professors that teach you, that you've had classes with, and there's a lot of other people that you could reach out to that possibly could come on board with your research. So I think that was one of the challenges that I had at that point, was understanding the process of reaching out to people or trying to find a supervisor outside of the classroom context, and also even within the classroom, just knowing whom to reach out to about that.
Thanks, Ajoke. I just want to remind everyone that we're on to the Baobab Tree, and this podcast is Black Students in Research at Mount Saint Vincent University. And here with me today, I have Naomi, Lucan, Kamla, Nicholas, and Ajoke. And they're all sharing their personal experiences of research at the Mount from different perspectives. And we've already identified that some of these participants didn't have to do research as part of their studies, but they're doing it. Some had to do the research as part of their degree, but it's equally across the board challenging to gather to get the kind of information that is required. And these are students who love research. And I'm saying this because I know all of these students, but also listening to the conversation, you can sense that you have to love it to be going through what you're going through and still pushing forward. So there's another difficult part of research that we do need to take into account, and it's that relationship piece of finding a supervisor. And both Kamla and Ajoke had alluded to this. You started the conversation, but I want us to dig a little deeper and try to remind yourself of what measures, what steps did you use when deciding who your supervisor and or committee members would be to help with this research? And I get it. In many cases, you don't have a choice. But I believe that there are some strategies that many Black students or many students in research have done to help shape who will be their thesis supervisor and who would be on their committee, including some of what Ajoke shared, which is getting to know the research work that professors are doing and being familiar with the faculty members that you're taking courses with. So, Nicholas, I'll ask you to jump in here first and help us. And if you may just think of your school work, not your other work in research, but think of academia. How did you go about selecting a supervisor or committee members for your thesis?
I think a lot of it perhaps started by like establishing relationships in classes with some of my professors. I had done a directed study with one professor, I think 2 or so summers ago, and that was a very nice experience for me. And I was able to like create a strong relationship with her. And because of that, I've had like numerous opportunities to do further research. In terms of like a coordinator, I think it all comes down to having a common interest in a specific area. Obviously, you have to be passionate about the type of work that they are doing as well, and ensuring that whatever you're interested or passionate about also aligns with some of the work that they're doing. So I think whenever you're choosing someone to work with or having a supervisor, that they should have an overlap in some of the outcomes that you would like to be brought out at the end of your research, and ensuring that you have the right support as well through them.
Thanks, Nicholas. Ajoke, can you add to Nicholas's comment?
Sure. So I think one of the things, and in retrospect, if I would do my research again, some of the things that I would do differently is the first time that I heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm trying to do my research and I'm going to interview a couple of professors at the Mount to see if they're a fit for me." I thought to myself, "Oh, I didn't know that you could do that." Because really, I wasn't necessarily aware that that was something that it was okay to do, like I said, because of a huge difference in academic culture. And so that's something that I really wish I was aware of. And yeah, I'm just saying that I want everybody to be aware that you could do that, that you could, go out there and try to find somebody that fits, because it's a huge commitment. So you really want to be sure that you have all the support that you're going to be needing as you progress in the process of doing your research. So that's definitely something that I wanted to say. And another thing that I think helps as well is to know, just like I think Randy must have mentioned this, to know the research areas of the various professors available. A limitation that I notice is sometimes what you want to do, it's possible not to find somebody who is doing exactly the same thing. And I think that could happen anywhere. So that's not necessarily, particular to the Mount, but that's also something that I noticed, that sometimes the direction you want to go is not necessarily the direction that somebody else in the university has gone or is willing to go, and that could lead to having to reframe your scope. Yeah, that's something I wanted to share.
Thanks, Ajoke. Naomi, can you add to that, please?
I think this is the first time that I actually have heard that you can interview professors for your research. I didn't know that was a thing that was happening. When I had decided to do my research, the first person that I spoke to was the professor that I had at that time, because she had spoken about doing the research during the sociology class. And I went up to her and told her that I was thinking of doing my honors. And then she just automatically became the professor that I used or I worked with, or the supervisor for my thesis. I hadn't gone out to ask somebody else. I didn't know that we could ask somebody else. I did need to get somebody else to be the second chair of my research. And I think that's when I went out to look for a professor that I felt had some kind of understanding that I needed for my research. But yeah, I do know that we could find out, like, handpick professors that we felt that we wanted to be in our research. And the question of how well did we work, it was pretty great. She really helped me, especially in my ethics. Going back and forth with the ethics board, she kind of stood in for me and put her feet down on some things that I wanted to do, and that was like a really great help in going through the ethics process. But yeah, actually, thank you for that information. I think I will share it with anybody else that wants to do research, because I didn't know that.
And thank you so much, Naomi. And Ajoke did make some really specific points, which really helps, which can help potential students who are engaging in research to have a better experience in their research work or with their research work, and have a better relationship with the committee members that they so choose to work with. Kamala, can you answer a question specifically as to why do you think it's important that we have a good relationship with those that we are going to embark on research with?
I like to think that I have a very unique mind, and it takes a very unique person to be able to tolerate my mind and my modus operandi. And so it was important for me to find somebody who, one, wasn't too busy for me. There are a lot of instructors, well, all the instructors on campus, they're very busy, but some are like majorly busier than others. So when you set a meeting, you maybe get 30 minutes out of them. You send emails and you'll probably get a response at the end of the week or something, because they have classes, they have a bunch of other stuff doing. And so I needed somebody who could make time for me when I needed the time, someone who had the patience to tolerate when I had those mild absence moments, when I did foolish things, for lack of a better term, and could just think the way I think and set me on the right path, because they understand that this is my thought process, and this is the path that I need to be on, you know, and not just see me as being lazy, because I'm not lazy, but I can go off on a tangent and get lost. So somebody who could pull me back and say, Kamla, this is the direction I need to be on. And I feel like it is important to have that kind of relationship with a thesis supervisor. Someone who thinks the way you think, because for my research, I'm taking an out of the box approach, and a lot of persons can think traditionally and not understand the concepts that you want to bring into research, you know? So somebody who thinks out of the box just as much as I do and can help me to stay on that trajectory. So even if I get frustrated in the middle, they can say, hey, Kamla, this is the goal. Let's work with it. Let's go. And so the person that I found to be on my committee, the persons I found to be on my committee, I feel like they understand the out of the box thinking. They're patient with me. They make the time when I request it, you know, and I don't feel like my meetings are rushed. I feel like I'm understanding. As also instructors that you can find that you understand when they speak. For me, I don't understand the highfalutin big words sometimes, you know? So I found someone who I could understand when she speaks, and she understands when I speak. So that was important for me.
Thank you, Kamala. And I see Naomi had something else to add there. So go ahead, Naomi. You can add to this.
Yes, I definitely agree with what Kamla said. Those points are very, very, very important when picking a supervisor. But I felt like one of the things that I had, and I actually had, this was an advice that was given to me by Randy actually, was having to make sure that, because I had supervisor, like I had my supervisor and I had the second person, and the second person was like really excited about the topic, and she was really passionate about it. And I had to make sure that I wasn't being overwhelmed by her passion. The passion was great because she helped me look for the things that I needed to find. But like I felt like at some point it kind of overshadowed what I wanted to do. And she was steering me to something that she thought was important to the research. And I feel like it's very important to have your voice in, because it's your research, right? No matter how passionate the supervisor would be in the topic that you had chosen, it's important to let her know that, okay, I understand, or let them know that I understand what you're thinking, how you're thinking, but like this is how I want to go. This is the direction that I want to move into, and not have to feel, because I don't know, like I was kind of feeling very bad in having to say that this is what I wanted to do. But then I realized that if I just let it go the way it was going, then the research wouldn't technically, I would be the one doing the research. Yes, I'll do the writing, but it wouldn't be me on paper. So I think that's also a very important point to look at when picking a supervisor.
Very, very good point there, Naomi. I'm glad we called you back to completely answer that question. And I just want to remind our audience that you're under the baobab tree, and we are listening to Black students in research at Mount Saint Vincent University. My friend Luca and I haven't heard from you in a while, so tell us how you chose your supervisor and their committee members, if that were the case, and what the relationship looks like.
Thanks for that question. So my story is maybe a little bit different because I basically decided who my supervisor was going to be before I actually got into Mount Saint Vincent. So I did my research about the different professors at Mount Saint Vincent before I applied, and I structured my letter of intent in such a way that I don't know who these letters go to, but in such a way that it would grab that particular professor's attention. So that is how I wrote my letter of intent. So when I finally got into the program, I learned a little bit more about who the professor was and so on. And yeah, he taught me some courses and so on. And during that period, I got to learn more about, you know, how that person operates. And so I decided that I would stick to that person. And for me, my experience with my supervisor and the other members of the committee is great, if you ask me. Whenever we meet, my supervisor, before we go into the meat of the matter, as they would say, he always like try to find out how I'm doing first, and I find that to be very important because instead of just starting to talk about the research and so on, he's like, "How are you doing?" And it for me it sounds genuine because I mean he's specific about the question that he usually asks. I mean, to the point where when I was like learning more about my supervisor and I was designing my research, and I have done. I did a thesis before back in Jamaica, and I was very familiar with the quantitative research method, and I wanted to do a quantitative research. I have never done qualitative research, but because I felt that this particular what I found out that this particular supervisor was, had more experience in qualitative research. But I never wanted to do qualitative research. But because of the personality of the supervisor, I decided that I would just stick with that supervisor and learn about qualitative research, which has been difficult for me, but I felt that it would be better for me to work with somebody that I know and feel comfortable around than to to give that up for an area that I'm comfortable with.
That was well said there, Lucan. And you raised this topic that I have here as a question as well, the contextual framework. I think that's very much important, and that and I believe Naomi mentioned this as well. So this is something that I believe that you all have as consideration when selecting either your topic or your supervisors. But I want to, this can be a quick answer, yes, no, and I'll open it for anyone to share. But do you think that your support committee understood or understands your topic and theoretical framework well enough to ensure that your contextual experiences are included in the research that you're doing? So in other words, do they understand you well enough to know why you write the way you write? Anyone can jump in and answer that question.
I can go. Well, through the semesters that I've been through, I felt as though initially my instructors didn't understand how I was writing. They kept telling me to reread stuff like that. But I feel as though for my methodology, uh, let me just say that I've changed my research topic about 4 times throughout studying, but when I met with my thesis supervisor, she heard all the topics I was exploring, and then she said, Kamla, just tell me about you. What's your history? And I told her my story, and she's like, but Kamla, all these topics, you've lived them, so why not take an auto-ethnographical approach to it? And I'm like, you know what, that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I feel as though my supervisor, she understands where I'm coming from. When I did my first draft and I presented it to her, she was very encaptured by it, so she understands the approach I want to take, especially in my writing style. So I feel like it's a very good match.
Thanks, Kamala. Anyone else wants to jump in there?
Yeah. I don't think I probably I'm not gonna address that question directly, but I just wanted to like address one of the challenges that I am having. As I mentioned earlier, well, I'm from Jamaica, and I think that one of the challenges that I am having doing my research is is my unfamiliarity with the area, and probably unfamiliarity with some of some aspects of the culture, right? And I say this because sometimes I feel during my research, I feel that this is a barrier, and it has been a barrier ever since I started my research, because being a student that is you know I have been in Halifax for maybe over 2 years or so. You find that it's a bit difficulty connecting with people, and based on my research, especially in COVID, it presents another level of difficulty in terms of actually getting people, and sometimes I feel like I am a bit isolated, and maybe insulated as well, and you just feel like you're alone because you don't. What the reason I'm saying this is that I feel that students who are coming after, would do better if they have somebody who can actually, apart from professors who have 100 people to deal with, can have somebody sort of who understands the culture here, to sort of help them navigate the path. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely, that was very clear, Luke, and I really love how you put those together. And I do understand your context there as well, and appreciate how you've shared the information. Does anyone else want to add to that?
All right, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is David. Hi, Lucan. It's been a while. How are you doing? It's well, not a question actually, just a comment. Thank you very much to all those who've shared their experiences. I've learned a couple of key information moving forward. I'm a new student actually. I'm a graduate student with the Child and Youth Study, and from I'm saying Ibiene to Nicholas to Lucan, of course, and Kamla. If of course, Anya Joke, I've picked a couple of vital information that was, of course, going to help new students like myself to navigate properly, so that I don't have to go through the same cycle of learning while you're on the road. I can also apply some of your experiences, some of the key information you've shared on this platform. So thank you very much. I've just been listening, and it's been interesting, really. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks, David. Anyone else wants to say anything? We're just taking this moment to give the panels, the panel members, a breather. So just you can ask questions or just say hi, share any comments. All right, 5. Oh, go ahead, Ajoke.
Yeah, so I was just going to share something real quick on, and I think it relates to the relationship aspect of having a supervisor. I was going to share that because of the nature of research, I think there is that aspect of being vulnerable, because this is where you, especially for somebody who is going through the process for the first time, it's a process where you're going to make some mistakes. It's a process where you're going to learn some things that you never knew, or be open to some information that you did not necessarily have exposure to prior to this time. And I see that need for the opportunity to be vulnerable in that relationship, whether with your supervisor or your thesis committee, or just having that person that is your sounding board that you can open up to about some of the information that you do not have, or some of the areas that you're struggling in. And I think that's also something to consider when thinking about a supervisor, because you want that professionalism, you want that somebody who is knowledgeable in that area that you're studying, but also you want to have that relationship side, somebody who, especially with COVID going on, there's a lot of things that could happen that would compound or make the process a little bit more challenging, and it sometimes could be a long process. So you want to have that in mind as well when thinking about who you want to be on your thesis committee, who you want to be, have as your supervisor as well. You want to be sure that that's somebody that you can be vulnerable with, because in the process that there's points where sometimes you may need to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ajoke. I just think that leads directly into our next question, which I'd really like to get a sense of what kind of supports were made available to you. But I understand as well that if you didn't know these supports were available, then you might not answer this question correctly. So I want you to go out on a limb and challenge yourself to think in thinking that um, if I'm going to conduct research at Mount Saint Vincent University and do a really good job at it, these are the tools that I need. And then ask yourself, did I receive those kinds of supports? And you might want to mention some of those supports, because there are other panel members here or folks listening who might not even know that the support that you have received even existed. And this is something that can help others to look forward to when they embark on research. Nicholas, I'll start with you on this question.
In terms of support, I can't really think of too much outside of the supervisors and just colleagues that I collaborate with. Interestingly enough, I did not know that Novanet was available at the Mount, and I found that's quite useful just for having a catalog. And the last thing that I would say is that there are opportunities to as well through Mount 101, which shares like some valuable technology like Zotero, which is a referencing software. And there are just like many different tools and applications that can really make your life as a researcher a lot easier. So I think if I were to give any advice, it would just be to inquire with supervisors, inquire with the library at the Mount, because there are a lot of tools that might be available to you that you had not known of in the past.
Thanks, Nicholas. I'll ask Ajoke, and then I'll ask Naomi to jump in right after Ajoke.
Yeah, so in terms of support, I'm going to share and this is not directly my experience, but I've had people, because of my research topic, speaking to the adjustment experiences of African international students. I'll speak more from that lens in terms of just understanding so every culture has, the nuances. You could be a PhD in the UK and come here to Canada to do your PhD and have to learn or relearn the academic culture, even though you would expect that you're doing a similar program, and you should have the same kind of experience. And I see that in my experience and in the experience of some of the participants that I've been speaking to, just understanding the nuances of the academic culture. So I've had people tell me that, you know, when it comes to sending emails, for instance, so you've decided to do research. Now you have your supervisor, but you're navigating a new system and you don't even know what is appropriate to say in your emails. For instance, you don't know. I remember a specific incident where somebody said she wasn't sure, like, how many times is it okay to reach out to this person? So I know I'm writing my thesis, but then is it okay to send you 5 emails during the week because that's how much work I've gotten done? Or is it okay to ask you this question via email or wait till we see in person? And I know there's no hard and fast rule because it's going to differ from person to person, but it's just that awareness that for some people it's a new territory. It's you learning about research, but also learning the nuances of this academic system that you're just being exposed to. Because I think when it comes to research, it's kind of, your experiences would be kind of different than just attending the regular classes where you turn in your assignments and stuff like that. So I've had a lot of people talk about challenges in that area, like understanding the nuances, what's appropriate to say, how to relate to the professor, for instance. And yeah, you also want to be sure that, and I think I might have said that already, but yeah, that's something that I thought I would share about the kind of support.
Thanks, that's okay. Naomi?
The support system that I had, from my supervisor, from my colleagues, from my friends, was great for me. With my supervisor, she was very open about the kind of information that she needed when she needed the kind of information. Because as Ajoke said, having to like keep sending emails back and forth to find out what she thought, if I was in the right place, was something that I thought about too and was very overwhelming to me. And my supervisor sat down, we kind of she put in dates in place on when she wanted, how she wanted it to be at that date. And that kind of helped me narrow down what I needed to do, when what I needed to do was due, how it should look like, what it should look like. And that helped me not to panic and put in a bunch of information that I was sending out to her in a rush. I think my support system was great. And I can't think of the one thing that I maybe when it came to like finding the articles that I needed for my lit review and all of that, I think that could have been better. But apart from that, I think it went the way that I hoped it would go.
Thanks, Naomi. There are some things that are necessary for the research work to be done, the kind of support that you require. You need, I just remember when I went to my supervisor for graduate work, there are times when I've decided, I don't think I want to go this week, because every time I went to the supervisor, I was guaranteed to walk away with 3 to 6 books, articles, and a lot more. Then I realized that person is actually thinking of me and thinking of the research work that I'm doing is such that when I approach them and I say, look, this is where I'm at, they were ready to give me actual materials as opposed to saying, oh, go find it yourself. They were ready to direct me to those authors and provide those materials that were really helpful to the work that I was doing. But there are other things that needs to be discussed here, and we haven't touched on it yet, which is things like funding and grants and peer-reviewed papers, conferences, and all these kinds of things. Were any of you encouraged to do this? Did you receive the kind of support that you needed to, and encouragement to do this kind of work during your research? And Lucan, I'll ask you to share, and then I'll ask Nicholas after that?
Talking about funding specifically?
Yeah, funding for your research work, any grants, anything of that sort.
No, 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 no. Not at all. It was partly my fault because I'm now in the phase of my thesis that they call continuing, and I didn't know that I would have to pay the amount that I was asked to pay. So I basically thought that I could like manage on my own in terms of how much I would pay for to continue my thesis and you know carry out my research. It's only at the maybe at the end of December 2021 to the beginning of January 2022 that I actually found out that I had to pay some money to the amount to continue my research. And as I said before, I knew that I had to pay some money, but I never thought that I would have to pay so much. But I think part of the issue is that based on what I've seen, for some of the courses, for some of the funding or bursary or whatever, you have to be doing a certain number of credits for that semester or that academic year. And I wouldn't qualify on those grounds because the only thing I'm doing is my research paper. So it's only this week I've been trying to see if I see some funding, which is probably a little bit, from my estimation, is probably a little bit too late, or it probably wouldn't make any sense because I've paid my fees already. So to answer the question, I didn't know much about funding, and at this point, I don't know if it will be possible to get any funding.
Thanks, Luke. And Nicholas, you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. I'd say that much of the funding that has been provided to me have been mostly like collaborative because they're really large projects. And I've been a part of those processes by being on the boards of grants. But doing an individual grant myself, I have not done that. So I can only give like my insights from like larger grants and how that would be attributed to my studies. So I think one example I can give is the critical dietetics. And one part of that is the Racism in Dietetics project, which I'm a part of. But the larger grant is something that we would typically have with lots of collaborators around the province and even Canada. So it looks a bit differently. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's good. Did anyone else want to jump in on that? Just to talk about any supports that are available, including grants or any kind of funding, university funding. And more specifically, I'm wondering if the graduate students are aware of the funds that are available through the Dean's Office for Students Conducting Research. You get I don't remember how much it is, but you do get some form of a student grant to help with your research. Though small, it's still money. So anyone wants to jump in and talk about financial supports that are available out there?
I don't have any information about funding and support, but what I can say, in order to minimize the amount you have to spend, and I think I don't know if Lucan or anybody else on this platform has any experience or can correct my perspective, but I feel like if as research students we start earlier, for example, for me right now I'm not registered, and I can't register on as a research student, you cannot register until you find your supervisor, your committee member, send the paperwork through to the processes for then your supervisor has to recommend you for registration. Like you can't just register for it and then do the process, which was something that I didn't know. So right now, those are the processes I'm going through so that I can be registered. And, you know, as an international student, you have to be registered for every single semester. So just starting the process earlier, being concretized in what you're going to do so you know who you're working with, and send the paperwork through. So at least by the current semester comes, you have everything set up so that your research isn't stretched beyond a year per se, because you know once your research goes beyond a certain period, then you have to go into what Lucan is in now, the continuing process, where you have to pay your fees again. So I don't know if that helps, or if
Yeah, thanks so much, Kamla. That really did help, and it provide this awesome segue. Before I ask the final question, I just want to remind the audience that we're on the Baobab tree, and we're exploring Black students in research at Mount Saint Vincent University. We learned a lot about their experiences, and I want to thank the audience, Naomi, Lucan, Kamla, Nicholas, and Ajoke for sharing so much information already. And my final question would be, how would you advise a potential student who are interested in research? I just want you to provide one last advice for that person or those students. And this will be our final question. And like I said earlier, I want to thank you for what you've already done, and I really appreciate the information you've provided. So I'm not going to call you by name. I'll leave the floor open for you to open your mic, and you just provide that one advice for students, potential students who would be interested in research. Let's start with Naomi. How about starting with you?
The advice that I'd give for potential students that thinking of going into research would be, one, I feel like we've already spoken about this, but picking first your topic, obviously. And I feel like before picking a topic, doing the research to see what information and academic support is already available is important, because then that can help you structure what you want to go into for research. Secondly, the supervisor that you pick is also very, very important, because if you have a supervisor that isn't backing you up, isn't giving you time, can be very draining, and can also dissuade you from actually doing the research itself. So picking a supervisor that has a good rapport with you, that understands you, even if it's not 100%, but 25 to 30% of you, and understands what you're thinking and where your mind is at for your research, is also very important. I don't really know much about funding, but if you are in a place where you can get funding, also having to do that research on getting the funding is also very important. But yeah, I think for me, as I've stated earlier, it's finding the topic that you know that you can do the research on, you're passionate about, finding research on that topic, and picking the good supervisor that would help you achieve the goal of the research are like the top two important things that I think is needed when going to do research.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi. And those are really some really key points. Can I ask Lucan to share his last advice, and then Kamla?
Yeah, first I think you, a student who is deciding to do research, first you have to choose a topic that you're passionate about, but you have to sort of balance that passion with the practicality of completing that research in here in Canada, especially during COVID, because you might have a topic that you're so passionate about, but in terms of the you know the issues that are related to collecting the data, you might have some obstacles there, and your research process can probably go on longer than you anticipate. if you don't try to balance passion with the practicality of doing the research.
Thanks, Lucan. And Kamla?
I think I said my final piece already.
All right, awesome. Nicholas and then Ajoke.
Yeah, I feel like I would be repeating a lot of the advice that was already said, but
Yeah.
if you're interested in research, just make sure it's something that you're passionate about and ensure that the supervisors and those who are giving you the support are also passionate about that topic. And, as I said, there's a lot of resources and tools that you can use to make your research stronger. And just don't hesitate from a feeling of you're not you're not capable of doing the work because you're not getting the right support. You just have to go out and find it. There are many people that are willing to help you.
Thanks, Nicholas and Ajoke.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna add to that by saying if possible to have like a thesis support group, because I find that helps and it's something that anybody in research can set up, like to just find a couple of other students or even a professor that is willing to, join the group or something to just have that sounding board and also finding other people that are in the same process so that you can bounce ideas off each other, learn from each other, and also to just have that support system around you. And I think the other thing for me would be to think through the process, because sometimes it's easy to start with the beautiful research topic that you are very interested in and then just fly with it. But then just thinking through the whole process, like think through the 5 chapters, for instance, and all the things that you would need to do so that you're sure that you're going in at least with a general overview of what you're going into than just the topic. So yeah.
Thank you so much. What I heard as a summary from our panelists is you can do it. Think about what you're about to do. Be passionate about the work that you're going to do. Make sure that you have a passionate supervisor. They must be passionate about your studies as well. They also say just find the topics, find academic support, find a good supervisor who loves the work that you're doing, is knowledgeable in the work that you in the field that you're about to embark, and finally to have a support group, a thesis support group to be specific, a peer of like-minded and students who are currently doing thesis or professors who are willing to sit in and support students here. So I want to thank the panelists, Naomi, Lucan, Kamla, Nicholas, and Ajoke for participating today. You've provided a wealth of information, and I really appreciate all the information you've given to us today. And to remind our audience, we're on the baobab tree, and the topic today, Black students in research at Mount Saint Vincent University. Thank you again.